Space Force established under Trump will be called the Guardians.
Of the galaxy?
No.
Yeah.
But the director of Guardians of the Galaxy immediately tweeted, "Can we sue this dork?"
See, and that's what Twitter's for. That's really what it is. What a beautiful moment.
Exactly.
No.
The Guardians. Hello. I honestly don't mind the name The Guardians as much as I mind their slogan, which apparently is heritage, mission, culture. Like, heritage and culture, why does this already feel fashy? You know?
Yeah.
It's like very, like, Proud Boys in space, like they're all going to start chanting, "Moons will not replace us!" So creepy.
Oh my God.
I don't even know what the Space Force is for. I'm sure someone in the comments will be like, actually, it's really important that, but I don't, is it important? Is it more important than people starving right now on Earth? Anyway, yeah. Do you guys think the Guardians is a good name? You like this?
Shane, you go. I talk a lot.
No, you go.
Oh my God. I mean, I think it's a rewrite, obviously for copyright infringement purposes. Duh. Also, you're right. It does sound super fashy, which I think is the best. I think that's the STD you get from fucking a Proud Boy is fashy.
I'm all fashy. Yeah.
Yeah. It does sound gross, and I do hope they shoot all of the Proud Boys into space, because that would be very funny to watch their hair, their little pompadours, like flopping around, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we have so much to take care of on this planet. And while space exploration gives people a lot of hope, I love space. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I love space, okay? But I think we could pause, deal with our shit, and then start looking over the galactic fence at some other thing.
The galactic fence. I love that. Agreed.
Stop.
Agreed. All right. Shane, I'm moving on. Last licks on Guardians.
Sorry. I agree, fashy.
Okay, we got fashy. I want them to have, like, shields. Like, I want them to have, like, cool shields.
Oh,
but they're, like,
God.
Yeah, they could go
anywhere.
back to the, what was it, like 2017 kind of alt-right look. Remember when they had, like, Basic Men and those guys, the shields and the crazy helmets and stuff? Maybe that could be their logo.
You know they're going to have
Basic
shields.
Men. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. They should go full Battlefield Earth, you know what I mean? Dreadlocks.
Yeah. Or there's always like a Spartan guy with the helmet, you know, give you one of those too.
Love it. This was the week where the mayor of Atlantic City announced that they would be auctioning off the rights to demolish the defunct Trump casino to the highest bidder. They're literally going to 9/11 his casino. And this time, Mr. Trump, New Jersey Muslims will be dancing in the streets. Just in case you want to know. And I'm going to join them. I'm going to be there. It's just crazy. I love this story, but also why do I feel like he's somehow still going to collect the insurance money on this demolition?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. What Trump does best is find ways to charge the federal government, state and local governments for his mistakes. And so, yeah, definitely. He's going to get all sorts of kickbacks from this. It's the only way he would let that piece of shit casino get demolished, you know, and I can't wait to see, you know, what weird plastic surgery he buys a child with the money he received from demolishing his own failed business.
You mean like a next bride thing? I'm like, when you said that, I was like, his next bride, you mean?
Next bride, or like getting Jared Kushner just like that much more Botox so his face just goes dead forever. You know what I mean? Just turns into a block of ice that'll never move. I can't wait for that, you know.
Just cut through things.
Yes.
If we all pool our stimulus checks for $600, maybe we could win this, though, and win the rights to demolish the Trump casino. It's like more worth it than half a windshield wiper and half a brake.
It's that they're going to auction off like pieces of the sign, anything with a logo on it. They're going to auction it off for like all those weirdos on Parler or the people who hate him, like the guy who kept demolishing his star in Hollywood Walk of Fame, and then he like stole the letters. You know what I mean? Like I think that's what's going to happen.
Love it. It's going to be right next to like Britney's locks of hair on eBay and shit like that.
Yeah.
I love those things. Yeah, dude, it's I just don't understand how you can bankrupt a casino. This is like if someone can explain this to me from a financial perspective, how is it possible to bankrupt a casino?
You probably decorate it the way Trump decorates everything. It probably all went into like gaudy budget and bad taco bowls. I don't know.
Oh, definitely bad taco bowls. Gold toilets, and also they didn't like teach the blackjack guys well enough, or the house just always lost. Did they like skimp on the lessons for like actually playing blackjack? And they were like, I don't know, I give up. It's like, dude, you got to hit up the Trump casino in Atlantic City. You always win.
What makes you think they allowed anything black in that casino? I mean, come on.
Exactly, blackjack was off the table. Literally, figuratively. One final story for y'all. This was the week where Putin showed us once again he is our daddy, when we learned that Russian hackers have been accessing U.S. government agencies like the Department of Treasury and Commerce for months now. While intelligence agencies and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo have acknowledged Russia's role, Trump, no surprises here, isn't so sure. And that makes sense, because he knows it can't technically be hacking if he just sold them the codes to try and get his PP tape back. Yeah. Just like, please, I'll give you Wilbur Ross's password. Fabergé _egg 69. Like, it really is Fabergé _ egg 69. Wilbur Ross, I see you, I know you, and your little droopy ass fucking vampire face. But this is like a huge hack, and I don't know, I'm always like, uh-oh. Well, anyway, moving on. I never know how to react to these hacks, because I'm like, well, did we fix it the last time? Nope, all right, anyway. Doopy-doo, just going to keep going on and giving my credit card to anyone who wants it on the internet.
It's infuriating to me that we're not calling this the Cold War that it is. You know, Agents of Chaos on HBO, which I know is very, like, leaning a certain way and definitely places blame a lot on, like, Julian Assange and a lot of that. But it was so infuriating to watch, because obviously this is warfare now, and we're not treating it that way, and it really should be treated that way, because there's no glitz and glamour, there's no show to it, there's no parades, there's no big tanks, there's no
warfare.
You just have to educate people and hold tech companies accountable, and that isn't sexy. That isn't a World War II style war where you can just, jump in and win. I do love that the CIA calls all their organizations Cozy Bear and Fancy Bear, and I think the Iranian organizations are kittens, and I think that is hilarious. I could be wrong, but I am obsessed.
One second, I have thoughts on this, but Shane, can you jump in? Because my computer's going to die, and I didn't grab my plug. Hang on.
Yeah, I was just thinking that my, favorite kind of manifestation of this, Russia-U.S. conflict is you can go down like a rabbit hole in the internet of road rage clips in Syria between Russians and Americans. It's so bizarre. They're like, trying to push each other off the road, having like standoffs, but never shooting each other, just kind of, being road ragey.
Yeah, and you gotta love a nice like Russian road rage clip. Also, how are there so many videos? Is everybody just issued a dash cam there? Is that the thing? Like, we gotta keep our economy going through YouTube clicks? I have no idea, but it's
like the police in the U.S. or
they
doesn't hold them any more accountable. But I'm sorry about that. Close call there. Yeah, I mean, it's weird because you can't we have to say two things at once. Like, we don't want the cyber attack, but I don't want a war. Fuck that noise. I don't want another war. And also, like, we shouldn't be doing this. You know, apparently the U.S. does this all the time as well to other countries. And it's like, no, man, can we get, like, free internet for everybody before we start doing espionage on other countries as well? So it's just, it's a little bit of a, I don't know if American politicians understand that you don't necessarily respond to this, like, cyber war with a hot war or, like, droning people. And, you know, and, like, I don't know, we'll see where Biden comes down on this. You know, I think a lot of people criticized Obama for not going harder on Russian hacking, but at the same time, he was an outgoing, that's the Democratic way, you know. He's outgoing, he's got to respect the wishes of the incoming Trump administration.
Hope and change, you mean, I'll do my best.
Exactly, but, you know, it's unclear where we want to go with all this. I just know, like, can we just fortify? How about just fortifying, you know? Just not allowing ourselves to be so open. Maybe everyone changes their passwords, and we have people who are actually tech savvy, you know, like.
Well, and I love that they broke in through the government contractors. So they didn't actually break in, like, they get in through these independent, you know, business people. And that, to me, you know, there's always an argument that, you know, the free market will do better at tech, at infrastructure, at policing, at incarceration. Like, oh yeah, they're going to do better, and they never do. They never do, and yet people believe that. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, we shall see. But that was the week where, you guys, and let's jump into this right before we go into talking to Shane, and I hope, Shane, you can stay a little bit longer than 7 o'clock. I want to go to some comments. Okay, thank you. Thanks. JTVJ on YouTube says no one should be hating anyone, so Dora needs to stop that part and just focus on the idea. Agreed. Going to be a difficult sell for him, I think. Thundervoice_1 on Twitch says Senate Democrats who fought against stimulus checks. That's what he's bitching about, or they're bitching about. Thundervoice. Hunter on YouTube, thank you for that super chat. That's so generous of you, saying that I look like Cardi B sometimes without the massively dilated pupils. I don't see the resemblance, but, like, I will take it any day of the week, because, you know, stan Cardi very hard. Let's see. And America, this person continues, Hunter, has so many aspects of that make it similar to a third world country without being officially called that. Shaking my head. Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely does. We are like the bathrooms in JFK Airport, which we are like, America is like the JFK Airport, which is just, there's like Swarovski diamonds and like Louis Vuitton shops, and then the bathrooms are shit. Like, the only part that's public has, like, the locks don't work, it's disgusting, no one's getting paid properly, clearly. That's what America is. Got a lot of the first world, got a lot of the third world. No Name on Twitch says, my 69-year-old mom found out she has COVID this week. I have had to threaten to take her keys if she keeps leaving the house. She believes I'm being brainwashed by bad people because I believe in science and facts. Oh, my God. That is so hard, and I'm sorry for that. Yeah. I don't know what to do. It's like, I think there's some great, here's what I think is great. There's some really good animations on YouTube that are actually like, here's how COVID works. And they came out early in spring, and I was watching them, like, a lot because I was fascinated with how it does work and how, like, here's your lung filling with little, you know, COVID viruses. And even just that might be a simple, accessible way to be like, this is real. You need to stay home. You could be at risk. So I hope she recovers, and sorry to hear that. And thank you all for still being here, and also TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App. Keep this show going. Just support everyone who makes it. Just me and a little scrappy team full of love. And let's get into this week we already did, but let's get into this pitch for this week, talking with Shane about Syria, policing, and all the rest. This is the pitch. Shane Bauer, my good friend. You're going to be my good friend, even though you don't want to. But you're writing a book right now about America's involvement in Syria, and this is a civil war that's been going on since 2011. We're talking 12 million displaced people, refugees, 500,000 deaths, or estimated, so we know. What are you covering in this book? What do you feel like it's important to explain, I guess primarily for an American audience, about America's involvement in this very long civil war?
Well, I'm not necessarily in this book trying to kind of lay out all of the policy. It's more of a deep look at Americans on kind of different, who fought on different sides of the war. So the military being one of those, but also people who joined ISIS and the YPG, which is a Kurdish group fighting ISIS. And there's just so many insane stories. I've met 50, 60 people who fought there, and there's like ex-military people, there's anarchists and communists, random guys that were just like, I'm working at Walmart and I want to do something meaningful, so I'm going to go fight ISIS. So, you know, I'm following some of these people through their experience, kind of on both sides of the front line, which also had, you know, American aircraft overhead, providing aerial support sometimes to, you know, anarchists and communists. It was a weird world, you know, weird war. But, you know, I will talk about also how, you know, the CIA program and the military program a bit. And one of the weird things about the Americans involved in Syria is that different parts of the government are kind of at odds with each other. Like you had the CIA backing the Free Syrian Army against Assad, and then you had the military essentially trying to fight ISIS and wanted, you know, Assad to stay. So it was, you know, a clusterfuck basically.
Jesus. How did that strategy, or that lack of a strategy, change when Obama left office and under the last 4 years of Trump?
Well, toward the end of Obama's presidency, there was a turn kind of away from the strategy of trying to topple Assad, or at least back the rebels that were trying to topple him, because of ISIS, and because they're even, you know, the rebels were getting more mixed up in Islamic groups, especially Jabhat al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda. So, you know, Obama was shifting kind of away from that, and then Trump, you know, officially ended it pretty quickly and focused on ISIS. And, you know, the weird thing is that I think when people look back on America's involvement in Syria, it's like you think about the moments that Obama was thinking about bombing Syria, the chemical attacks, and I think the involvement of the Trump administration has gotten a lot less attention, but the level of bombing is just accelerated so tremendously under Trump, and this is all in the counter-ISIS campaign, but there was an entire city, which I've been to many times, Raqqa, which was just flattened. You know, I've never seen anything like this, and it was just completely bombarded from the air. So it was this kind of like war strategy where, you know, Americans were not putting themselves at risk. They had, you know, essentially people on the ground fighting, and they were just bombing from the air. And people, you know, kind of gave the U.S. carte blanche because it was ISIS. You know, everyone wanted to get rid of ISIS, so it was kind of like, do what you have to do.
And there was never, I mean, what was the facilitation, or what has been the humanitarian facilitation of any kind of civilians out of that situation? Like, that wasn't even on the table to negotiate.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. I mean, ISIS was not letting civilians out of these cities also, you know, so people would try to leave and they would get shot because ISIS knew that, you know, having civilians in the city was easier for them, but they weirdly were kind of banking on the idea that Americans would not bomb civilians, you know.
Man, they gambled wrong there. Right?
You know, people found ways out at different times, you know, before, like, the war would kind of come to each city at a different time, and there were periods where people could leave, but a lot of people didn't, either because they didn't know it was coming or they couldn't, they had no money, it's not easy just to kind of leave your house in the middle of a war zone.
Yeah. I mean, now, it's like, it definitely feels like the consensus, obviously, between Assad and Russia, who is helped on the side of Assad, and now the U.S. have kind of been coalescing, right? And and there's so many foreign actors in what is effectively a proxy war and has been a proxy war. But now that we're like in the year 2020, what state is Syria in now, and where do things stand?
So the last time I was in Syria was in February, and even at that time, this has gotten worse, but the economic situation is really, really bad in Syria. We think about like the bombings and this kind of sort of spectacular battles, which were horrific, but the country is now just really being ground down, and it's also affected, populations. So there's been moments of kind of like protests in Alawite cities, and but I think there's somewhat of a stalemate in the country for now. The U.S. and its allies control about a third of the country. Assad is pretty clearly won the rest of the country, aside from the U.S. controls, which is the northeast, and then also Idlib, which is the kind of last pocket that's held by the opposition. So they've been trying to fight to regain that. So that city gets bombed still from the Syrian government and Russia, and then there's the wild card of Turkey, which Turkey is also always wanting to kind of move in on the Kurds in the northeast, but for now the U.S. is there. So necessarily think that these lines that have been drawn are going to stay this way. It's just hard to know. It really is pretty much completely dependent on these international backers that are kind of using their proxies on the ground.
Right. I mean,
and I was what I was talking earlier with this road rage is you have these situations now where the U.S. and Russia are kind of right next to each other in some places, and literally there will be Russian convoys driving down the road next to an American convoy, and they'll be trying to push each other off the road. It's they won't shoot at each other, but they're getting in these crazy road rage situations. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, I mean, if the one, there's this is the thing, it's the one positive is that there's maybe less ISIS, right? But then how many civilians had to die to accomplish that? But it is one of the many, 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 many forces. And I encourage everyone to read Shane's piece about this for Mother Jones, which also is a video series. And is it behind the front lines or behind?
The lines, yeah.
Behind the lines, yeah. I mean, one last question on Syria that I wanted to ask you is, it is, you trying to be an independent journalist, being an independent journalist covering Syria, and knowing just how fractured and frayed the discussion has been, and I think deliberately. I think we know that Assad and Russia have absolutely won the propaganda war when it comes to disinformation online. That's been won, right? And the fact that people who've worked on this issue closely are at each other's throats, are calling each other, agents of X, Y, and Z, government. And for me, someone who's been politicized by the anti-Iraq and Afghanistan war movements, initially when this whole thing with Syria happened, it was well, where do we fit in? How do we support the people? The people who wanted Assad gone, and the people who obviously were rightfully scared. And I think the people who've been sidelined and bombed and made to be refugees. but as an anti-war organizer, you're always like, well, so sovereignty, and how do I, support this effort? But you can't do that without being called, a regime change imperialist who wants Americans to go in there, et cetera, et cetera. How do you find your way, and what gives you, I guess if you want to just explain some of that misinformation and how you, navigate that jungle.
Well, I mean, I think the way that I've learned to navigate it is just getting off Twitter because it's really the only place that you see it, A lot of this misinformation stuff really plays out on Twitter, and it's effective because journalists are on Twitter, So, it's not even like there's a version of a story that, an example is the chemical attacks. It's an issue that has had a lot of misinformation on the internet, from the Syrian government and Russia, just saying that they're fake. And it's not even that, people are seeing the stuff and they're like, oh, it was fake. It's just they're seeing so many, it's like the waters are muddied, It's just like, oh, I've seen that they're fake. I don't know, who really knows? So it just kind of basically pushes people to kind of just disconnect and give up,
Totally. It's like, well, and also, and it pushes people to say, well, if you're not an expert on it, you can't care about what's going on, Which
it's really interesting to me, I was very sucked into those kind of Syria social media, Twitter battles for a long time, and what's interesting to me, looking back on that, is that it's a really small number of people, that are just really good at trolling and just, pissing people off, pissing off journalists, making them fight with them, being like, hey, come debate me on my show now,
Right.
It's just, and this is just a thing that happens on Twitter a lot, as we see, there's journalists who basically make their name on Twitter, and the best way to do that is just start picking fights with people with more followers than you. It's kind of a winning strategy, but who knows? It's going to last. What's going to happen with these people? I mean, they get so marginalized because they just become, at least with Syria, it's like they just sound like kooks that are just completely repeating the Russian line on, an issue, and obviously, being opposed to American war efforts, American involvement in other countries should not necessarily push you to being a Russia apologist. I mean, that's,
Right. I mean, that's the thing. It's I've heard, it's war crimes are war crimes are war crimes, y'all. It doesn't matter who's doing it. We don't support that kind of shit. It doesn't matter. I mean, the Syrian civil war is so complicated, and I've appreciated your reporting on it from being honest about how many actors there are, about the shifting terrain, about the human cost and the lives that have been caught up in it. So it's it's such a not black and white war, and I think we forget that. And it doesn't mean we disengage, but it means rather than rushing to well, we know exactly how to feel about this.
Yeah, and it's also a war that's not going to be hashed out on Twitter. It's just way too complicated for that,
If only we could solve it by getting enough faves. All right, well, I wanted to ask you, you wrote this incredible piece about the Vallejo Police Department, and based on the murder of a young man who was demonstrating and potentially involved in looting, I believe, Sean Monterosa in Vallejo, but was shot 5 times. Tell us what you learned from your reporting about that police department.
Yeah, so Sean Monterosa got killed, that week of the first week of the George Floyd uprising. He was looting in Vallejo, and I, kind of thought, let me just write about this person. This person was, a looter. There's kind of this whole debate about looting, but he got killed, But as I dug into it, I really started to understand more about the Vallejo Police Department and how the city politics had been taken over by the police union. The city went bankrupt in 2008, and because so much of the the general fund of the city was going to the police and firefighters. Their union had just won crazy contracts. It was like they won like 40% wage increases over like 5 years or something.
Damn. If only teachers could get that. They got like a struggle for like an 11% over 10 years or something.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think that was in part due to